A lot of you probably want to know how to film good B-roll for your YouTube videos or just for personal projects and things you're working on. And of course that term is thrown around all the time, so before I get into the video, I'm just going to quickly explain what B-roll is, or at least what I think it is. B-roll is the footage you see overlaid onto the A-roll you're listening to. Now some people think it just stops there, but I also think B-roll is short cinematic sequences in between the main video you're making, say just with music, like I'll show you an example right here.
Okay, let me end this little video and add some B-roll. And while that's charging over there, I'm just gonna open up this SD card to put in the camera.
So now that we got that out of the way, I'm just gonna go through some points and tips on how to get better B-roll. First of all, starting with lighting. In any situation, lighting is one of the most important parts of your video, so I thought it'd be a great place to start. Now, as far as lighting with B-roll goes, I mean, it's pretty simple. If you're outside, you should try to film when it's cloudy or during golden hour. And if you're inside, honestly, just a large, diffuse, soft light source is gonna work great. It doesn't really matter the brand of your light, and if you're doing products, even, it doesn't really matter the positioning of your light, as long as it is just shining onto the subject, usually just from the side, you know, just like as if you were filming someone's face. Lighting for B-roll, especially for product B-roll, is extremely simple. There's really not much more I have to explain there. As long as it shows the subject, shows depth in the subject, and is soft, it usually works well. Now the next thing, focal length. This is actually very important for B-roll and not something you should take so lightly. Okay, why am I making that sound so serious? Something I came up with is if you're filming on a crop sensor camera, you really shouldn't go wider than 35 millimeters. And if you're filming on a full frame camera, then you definitely should not go wider than 50 millimeters. The thing about focal length is that the tighter your focal length is, so the more zoomed in your lens is, it's gonna make the background blurrier, and it's just gonna look a lot better for filming one specific thing and not like a landscape. And of course there are examples for landscape with B-roll, but that video is not about that. Right now I'm just mainly talking about products or people. So you're gonna want to be filming tighter focal length. Some people even film like 85 millimeter on a full frame camera, and I know that's a bit crazy, but if you want to do that, I think it could look great. It really just depends on what specifically you're filming, but most of the time don't shoot B-roll wide. Now the next thing is movement. In your shot you're gonna need movement, whether that be your camera or your actor or a product, really whatever it is, you need some movement in the shot or it's gonna look like a picture. Just imagine like cool upbeat music playing and it's just static shots of someone sitting there or standing there, camera on a tripod, they're not moving. That just looks terrible. You're gonna need movement of some sort. Now, one thing to be careful of with movement is you want to make sure it pushes the story forward. So say it's B-roll overlaying on top of a voiceover or a talking head clip. Then if the voiceover is giving you more information into the story, it will maybe be a push-in shot. Or if they are wrapping something up or showing that that thing is slowly not part of it anymore, or they let go of that, whatever it may be, then you can do a slowly backing up shot. You can do pans from side to side. I do that all the time with products. Or you could do slowly the camera moving from side to side, like a slider shot, but I have no examples of that because I don't have a slider. Put your tripod on a towel, whatever. I made a video about that a while back. Just think of ways to add movement to your shots. It's always gonna look better in the end. Now, here is where the problem comes in. If you're trying to add movement into your shots, especially if you're following the second tip, which is to film at a tighter focal length, you're in trouble because your video is probably gonna look shaky if you don't have a stabilizer. But thankfully, I actually have a solution to that, which is if you can, film in 60 frames per second. So that means if your timeline is in 30 FPS, then you can slow it down halfway and it'll remove all of those jitters or a couple of the shakes, it'll just smooth them out. Or if your timeline is in 24 frames per second, then you slow it down by 2.5 times, I'm pretty sure. And that's gonna even more get rid of those jitters and stuff. Now, I get it. Some people have limitations with gear. You can't film in higher frame rates. I experienced that personally for a long time. And you don't necessarily have to follow that step, but maybe you can throw on a stabilizer in post. Check out my last video I uploaded about camera hacks, and one of them is actually a camera strap hack around your neck that you can use to get smoother B-roll or smoother footage. So if you can't film in higher frame rates, that's okay. Just try to make it as smooth as possible. So along with 60 FPS, I'm going to talk about more camera settings. You're going to want your aperture to be usually pretty low because in things like B-roll of people or products, it's better if the background's blurry. And if you're letting in more light, especially if you're filming in low light situations. Now this one's important. Your shutter speed needs to be 1/120 if you're filming in 60 FPS, or basically just double double your frame rate. I say that all the time and it sounds so repetitive, but it's important to tell you because some people watching these videos don't even know that. And if you don't follow that rule, your videos are gonna look weirdly choppy and you don't want that to happen. So, quick little review. First tip was lighting. Try to shoot with a large diffused light source. Second tip, focal length. Don't shoot too wide. Third tip was movement, so just try to add movement in some way to your b-roll. Fourth tip was camera settings, 60 FPS if you can, or higher so you can slow it down in post, shutter speed double your frame rate, and aperture pretty low if you can. Now at this point you're probably wondering, that was only 4 tips. Nobody does that in videos. They always have 5 or 3 or a number that looks good, and I'll tell you exactly why I didn't do that, because I couldn't think of another tip. So that's the end of the video.